So when you said that with your second book that you had trouble with the opening, did it like, so I read something about from Zadie Smith recently where she said that she spent maybe 5 months on her first 5 pages, like, because she just couldn't get it to fire. And then after that, when she got that, set, then the rest of the book was
Yeah.
really quick. But she didn't progress until she figured she had her first 5 down right.
Yeah.
Do you do that, or do you kind of think this is like good enough, and then I'm going to come back and fix it?
Yeah, I mean, I like that essay because it kind of again provides this taxonomy. I forget what word she uses, like master builder and
Yeah.
I forget-
Macro and micro.
yeah, macro planner and micro manager, or I forget what it is. But I do that in a way for each draft. I mean, what she's talking about is she gets her beginning perfect, and then basically the rest of the draft like pours out. That's certainly not the way it works for me, but I will try to get the beginning. For each draft, the beginning is an important sort of piece that I have to get into place before I can write the rest of it. I can't, write from chapter 2 on and then come back and write the beginning. I do have to write the beginning, even though I'm going to scrap it later.
Right. And do you feel like the tension is like, Zadie talks about how that tension has to be in that first, in those first few pages to actually drive and energize the book, to actually propel the book? Do you think of it as a spring that actually launches the rest of your book?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's true. For her, I think that she's talking about that from like a process point of view, right? So she's saying that like as a writer, I need to write these things in order for me to write the rest of the book. I don't think that's true. I think that as a reader, you need to be entered in, you need to have this sort of like doorway that you enter in just the right way that will sort of prime you for the rest of the book. And, the beginning is the, springboard. It's the way we meet the characters. It's this kind of fuse that you light that, burns throughout the book and starts in that beginning. But to me, it's not a writerly process thing. It's trying to create a beginning that works like that for the reader, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a really good spot to ask everybody if they have any questions. And you can actually either do your raise the hand thing so that you come up to the top of my screen, or you can actually stick your hand up on the camera. Anybody? I can't see all of you at one go because there's so many of you, so. Astounding. Oh, wait, Doug, you have a question. Doug, go ahead.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Michael. Good to see you.
You too.
We've been working on Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and there's a beat theme stated at 5%. I know it's all very formulaic, but I'm curious about stating a theme. On my novel, it ends up being on page 17. Does that really make much difference, or how much?
I don't know. I mean, to me, one would hope that the theme is kind of like inherent throughout, like in that scene I read from the Last Watchman. I never state the theme, but from the outset, you feel, one would hope, that this is a story about what it means to live in a place where you're a minority and under threat, what it means to live in a place where lots of different people are kind of like rubbing up against each other and interacting with each other, and what it means to kind of to act in fear and anger towards people that are different, and what it means to act with forgiveness and understanding and giving people the benefit of the doubt. And so those themes are super important. That's basically what the whole book is about. And I would hope that they are kind of encapsulated in this microcosm of the first couple pages. But do I feel like you actually need to state it? No. But I think that but one would hope that it's infused throughout.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Shirin, do you want me to call on folks?
I muted myself. Sorry. No, Sarah Ernst had a question for you.
Yeah, hi. So amazing list of how to open properly, or different techniques and tools to do that. And I'm curious, like the opposite of that, like what have you seen that you would recommend? Like definitely avoid this, don't do this. These have been disastrous.
Mm. I think that, I'm trying to think. There's a few, I'm trying to think about like the final projects that I've read for my students, and like a couple things that I've noticed in the beginnings is like, one, providing like zero context or explanation, just like dropping us in to a scene where two characters are talking or interacting with each other or having some sort of conflict, and you have no idea who they are, what they mean to each other, what's at stake in their relationship, where they are in the world and space. I mean, there's this one story I read, and the characters are like in like a kink dungeon, and we don't realize that until page 3. And that just seems like a lost opportunity, and B, like super disconcerting to like think people are like sitting at a coffee shop or whatever, but then they like pass by, someone being like held up by like a nipple clamp or something. And you're like, wait, where am I? Like, what's going on here? And so there's that, providing context to the reader and sort of like letting them know what's going on, where we are in space and time, and who these characters are, how they're relating to each other. Mm-hmm. And then there's also kind of semi on the flip side, doing like a lot of world building that's explicit up front, I think can be kind of off-putting to a reader, which is kind of the opposite, impulse, where, there was this one story where, this character is standing looking out on the city and like remembering what his father told him about, the nature of this particular society in which he lives. And, that might seem like not that different from what I was trying to do with my beginnings, and it may not be that different, but, I think with the beginnings that I've written, I want to have some sort of question or mystery or conflict there from the outset. Okay. That keeps the reader reading, because if we're just standing on top of a hill looking out over the city, there's not much that's keeping us going, keeping us engaged.
Thank you.
So I have a question that off the back of that. I remember years ago, you when I was working on it was actually called Me Athena, you kept prompting me. You kept just like asking me, well, but what kind of story is it? Do you remember that? And you'd go, is it a boy meet girl story? You had it reduced like down to like its basics. Do you think, first of all, so here's the question: your coming book, what kind of story is that?
It's like a Bildungsroman, like a coming of age story. It's about this particular character learning to, exist in, her skin. She's a teenager, basically. And she becomes like the queen pretty early on, and foils a plot against the Jews. So it's a retelling of the biblical book of Esther. And it's a really weird book. And, in a lot of ways it's about good versus evil and what's good and what's evil. But to me, the main thrust of the story is this character coming of age. And I read a really interesting sort of take on the book of Esther, which said that it's about maturity and becoming a sort of responsible member of society. And so she's trying to sort of understand herself and how she fits into this larger world, but she's also trying to sort of reckoning with her privilege and power, which is, what any good coming of age story does, is that, the character is trying to understand themselves in relation to the people around them and how that they impact the world.
Right. And so coming back to our first pages theme today, so do you think that the answer to that question, what type of book is it, needs necessarily to be in your first pages?
I don't think it needs to be there, but I think that it's helpful in knowing what type of book you're writing. Can help you sort of set out. I don't think it necessarily needs to be there, but I think that you want to know, like, okay, what's this about? Because you're ushering the reader into it, and in some ways, with The Last Watchman, the kind of more narrow frame of this contemporary character getting off a plane and getting interrogated by a customs agent isn't what the book was about. At the end of the day, the book was about something kind of larger, and the beginning that I went with kind of encapsulated that better.
Cool. So you see faces that are familiar and some that aren't. Like you said, did you want to call anyone out? Mike Wynn has a question for you, and then I thought after that you could go pick on people.
Okay.
Mike?
I have everyone's name here, so it's
Hi, Michael.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, thanks. Hey, I remember you doing a reading at the Fort Bragg City Hall a few years ago.
Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was the Oracle of Istanbul, and I was struck by all that rich detail, the sensory effects of your writing. And I think you opened in the omniscient, detached point of view, giving everything, the sounds, the smell, even some history. I'm wondering, when you the third person point of view, when and how do you know when to use some of that same rich scene detail, setting detail in scene through the character's eyes?
Well, in the beginning, I don't know. I think you want to establish that sort of question or the mystery or the conflict or the tension or whatever it is that's keeping the reader reading first. And then, and you can speckle in a little bit to sort of ground us. I think that's important. And, you want to feel like the character is a person, a body in space in the world and not just kind of floating out there.
Sure.
So I think that that's important. But I think that what I was talking about before, and what not to do is, sometimes people will do this long paragraph of describing things, and it's easy to kind of get lost in that description, and not feel anchored in some sort of conflict or tension.
Okay.